We're in Book 1, the Book of Beginnings, Canto 4, the Secret Knowledge. And this canto has 6 sections. Last week we read just the first paragraph of, this canto has 7 sections. But last week we read we stopped at the end of the first paragraph of the 6th section. So now I feel like reading again from the beginning of the section. I will read just to the bottom of page 67, and then we'll go back and look in detail at each sentence. In these 7 sections, Sri Aurobindo is showing us different facets or aspects of the secret knowledge which lies at the basis of this poem. The master of existence lurks in us and plays at hide and seek with his own force. In nature's instrument loiters secret God. The immanent lives in man as in his house. He has made the universe his pastimes field, a vast gymnasium of his works of might. All-knowing, he accepts our darkened state. Divine, wears shapes of animal or man. Eternal, he assents to fate and time. Immortal, dallies with mortality. The all-conscious ventured into ignorance. The all-blissful bore to be insensible. Incarnate in a world of strife and pain, he puts on joy and sorrow like a robe and drinks experience like a strengthening wine. He whose transcendence rules the pregnant vasts, prescient now dwells in our subliminal depths, a luminous individual power alone. The absolute, the perfect, the alone, has called out of the silence his mute force, where she lay in the featureless and formless hush, guarding from time by her immobile sleep the ineffable puissance of his solitude. The absolute, the perfect, the alone, has entered with his silence into space. He has fashioned these countless persons of oneself. He has built 1,000,000 figures of his power. He lives in all, who lived in his vast alone. Space is himself, and time is only He. The Absolute, the Perfect, the Immune, one who is in us as our secret self. Our mask of imperfection has assumed. He has made this tenement of flesh His own, His image in the human measure cast, that to His divine measure we might rise. Then, in a figure of divinity, the Maker shall recast us and impose a plan of Godhead on the mortal's mould, lifting our finite minds to His infinite, touching the moment with eternity. This transfiguration is earth's due to heaven. A mutual debt binds man to the Supreme. His nature we must put on as He put ours. We are sons of God and must be even as He. His human portion we must grow divine. Our life is a paradox with God for key. Last week we looked at the first paragraph, which runs up to line 753. So we'll start from line 754 now and go through sentence by sentence. Would you like to start?
The Absolute, the Perfect, the Alone, has called out of the silence His mute force, where she lay in the featureless and formless flesh, guarding from time by her immobile sleep the ineffable visions of His solitude.
Yes. So He is telling us different ways of seeing this presence of the Master of existence lurking in us, inhabiting the whole universe. And now He tells us that the Absolute, the Supreme, the One, the Perfect, the One Self, the Alone, has called out of the silence His mute force, His power, His dynamic power. She was lying in that silence, in that featureless and formless hush, guarding from time by her immobile sleep the ineffable puissance of His solitude. As long as His dynamic power was asleep, then He is the transcendent, the supreme, ineffably, inexpressibly powerful, and all alone, His solitude. But He's decided to wake her up. He's called His mute force out of the silence. In the silence, she was protecting him from manifestation and world. But he's woken her up. You want to ask something?
Yes, I don't really get the structure of the sentence. So she is guarding the powers from time.
Yes, she's guarding the ineffable puissance of his solitude. She's protecting that from manifestation, from time, from space. Shall we go on, Alice? You're ready?
The absolute, the perfect, the alone, has entered with his silence into space. He has fashioned these countless persons of one self. He has built 1,000,000 figures of his power. He lives in all, who lived in his vast alone. Space is himself, and time is only he.
So he's woken up his force and he's entered into the manifestation. He has entered with his silence into space, and he shaped all these countless persons, which are only all of them expressions of his one self. He's built 1,000,000 figures of his power, all these forms, everything that we see in this universe, and he's living in all of them. He lived in his vast alone. Space is himself, and time is only he. Here Sri Aurobindo is showing us the 3 modes of expression of the One, as the transcendent, the universal, the whole manifestation of space and time. And next he will tell us how he enters into every individual. He exists here as the individual, as the transcendent, the cosmic, the universal, and now this third sentence. Kamala, you would read it, please.
The absolute, the perfect, the immune, one who is in us as our secret self, our mask of imperfection as assumed. He has made this tournament of flesh his own. His image in the human measure cast, that to his divine measure he might rise, darling a figure of divinity. A maker shall recast us and impose a plan of Godhead on the mortal's mold, lifting our finite minds to his infinite, touching the moment with eternity.
Yes. So he's still the absolute, the perfect. He's not alone anymore because he's become the many. But he's immune. He can't be damaged or touched in any way. No? That one is in us as our secret self. But he's put on our human mask of imperfection. He's made this tenement of flesh his own, this body. Sri Aurobindo often speaks of the body as a house, a place where one can live. No? So a tenement is a house where many people can live. No? He's living in this tenement of flesh, in the body. He's made an image of himself to our scale, in the human measure. It's a biblical idea that God has made man in his own image, but on a reduced scale, in the human measure. And he's done that so that we little figures of himself can rise to his divine measure. When we can do that, then he will recast us. The craftsmen who make bronze statues, they can do that sometimes. They can remelt the metal and make a new figure. No? So he will recast us, all we little figures of himself, and impose a plan of Godhead, a divine plan on this mortal mold, this shape. He will lift up our limited, finite minds to his infinite mind. And he will touch the moment, all the moments of time, with eternity. He'll make a connection between the transcendent, the universal, and the individual. You'll read, Ton? You can ask something first, yes. Yes.
I understood last time that in the previous section the conclusion was the Godhead is the Absolute, is living in everything.
Yes.
And now I read there is something secret in it. How can something that is everywhere, that exists in everything, how can that hide?
It's an amazing thing. I had an experience of this once. That the best secrets, they're not hidden, it's just we don't see them. So with our little finite consciousness, we can't be aware of all this. Only when he lifts us to his infinite. But Sri Aurobindo's really giving us a chance to catch some glimpse of this wonderful truth, no? This secret knowledge. Actually, that's what we find so difficult to believe. All this, all this, all this. He's living in it all. The divine presence is everywhere. But all we feel is our little limited personalities. Only very rarely something opens us up and we, But he wants us to do this. That's then the next sentence.
This transfiguration is first due to heaven. Neutral death finds man to supreme. This nature we must
put on.
As he puts ours. We are sons of God. We must be even as he. His human portion we must grow divine. Our life is a paradox with God for king.
Yes. This transfiguration from human to divine, we owe this to the One. This is earth's due to heaven. The earth, the material world, owes this to the higher levels of consciousness, that we make this great change or undergo this great change. We are connected with the Supreme by a mutual debt. He owes us something and we owe him something. A mutual acquaintance. It's somebody that, two people, they both know them. Something that's mutual. It binds two people. A mutual debt binds us to the Supreme. He has put on our human nature and become us. So that absolute and perfect and alone, he has incarnated in this world of strife and pain. He's put on our appearance, no? And he's dwelling within us in our subliminal depths. So he's put on our nature, and he's just waiting for the moment when he can lift us up and transfigure us into his nature. No? We are sons of God, and we must become just like him. We are his human portion. We must grow divine. And this is actually the key to the mystery of our life, our puzzling life. Our life is a paradox. It seems so contradictory, so many puzzling things about it. That divine presence in us and in everything is the key to that puzzle, to that mystery. Sebastian, you'll read?
Our life in paradox is God for keep, but meanwhile all is a shadow cast by dream. And the music in a mobile spirit, life itself done the aspect of a youth. The burden of a long unmeaning tale. For the key is hid, and by the deconstructed and by the consigned kept. The secret God beneath the threshold dwells.
Yes. So that's the key. God is the key. But until we find the key, and until that transfiguration happens, but meanwhile, we don't really understand this universe that we're in. It's like something shadowy, a shadow cast by a dream. And to that spirit who's dwelling in us in a kind of meditative, unmoving state, this life in the universe, his own existence, seemed to him something mythical, not fully true, mysterious. No? And this is because the key is hidden from us. It's there, it's hidden, it's kept by the inconscient. That level in nature, in the universe, where where consciousness is withdrawn, as if deeply asleep. The secret God, who is the key to everything, dwells below the threshold of our awareness. We are not aware of his presence. Lorraine?
I think you left one line.
Yes.
Which one? The burden of a long
Unmeaning tale, yes. A burden. It has a double meaning. Actually, the word burden has many meanings. A burden is a heavy load, yes. But it can also mean a message. Somebody gives you a message that you're supposed to carry verbally to somebody else. You don't repeat the exact words that you were told. You just pass on the meaning of the message, the burden, the meaning, the essence. And the burden can also be in a song. There's a chorus that gets repeated and repeated and repeated at the end of every verse. If that carries a message, a meaning, we call it the burden. So here, life and himself put on or have this appearance of a myth, some mysterious tale that's come from long ago and we're not sure what it means. No? The burden, perhaps the message of some long tale which doesn't really seem to have a meaning. Life, it's been going on here on this planet for such a long time. What is its significance? And who am I? The spirit, the conscious being within us doesn't really know why it's here, who it is and why it's here. And that's because this key, this secret knowledge is hidden deep within us in the unconscious levels, beneath the threshold of our awareness. Lorraine, would you read?
The secret God beneath the threshold dwells, in a body obscuring the immortal spirit, a nameless resident vesting unseen towers, with matter shapes and motives beyond thought, and the hazard of an unguessed consequence, an omnipotent, indiscernible influence. He sits unfelt by the form in which he lives, and veils his knowledge by the groping mind.
So this is the secret God. He's in us, residing in us. We don't have a name for him. And Sri Aurobindo's given it a capital R, a nameless resident. It suggests a little bit the British colonial system in India. They didn't govern directly all the states of India. There were some semi-independent states, the princely states. But the British government would send a resident, a representative of the British government to live in that state and keep an eye on things, and very often advise the ruler more or less forcefully what he was supposed to do. No? So this is a person who isn't supposed really to have any powers, but there he is. He's powerful. So this nameless resident who's living within us, he says invests. It's as if he gives certain powers, unseen powers. He covers them with matter's shapes and motives beyond thought, things that are done for reasons that thought can't fathom, and the hazard of an unguessed consequence. Hazard is chance, things that happen unpredictably by chance. He knows the consequences, but we can't guess them. He's sitting within us, an all-powerful, indiscernible influence. The resident has influence. In fact, he's all-powerful, but we can't see him. We can't perceive his presence. He's sitting here in us, unfelt by this form in which he lives. And he has all power, he has also all knowledge, but he veils his knowledge in us by the groping mind, the mind that is feeling about in this twilight and darkness of ignorance, trying to find its way. That's an expression of the influence of the resident, but he's deliberately covered up his all knowledge and all power. Joel.
The wanderer in the world his thoughts have made, he turns in the chiaroscuro of error and truth to find the wisdom that on high is his. As one forgetting, he searches for himself, as if he had lost the inner light he seeks. As a sojourner lingering amid alien scenes, he journeys to a home he knows no more.
This is the soul in us, this nameless resident. He's veiled his knowledge. He's put on our mental consciousness. So, like all of us, he's become a wanderer in this world, not knowing his way, even though he's made this world himself. Out of his own thoughts and conceptions, he's created all this. But now he's lost himself in it, deliberately. So he's turning here and there in a chiaroscuro of error and truth. It's it's an Italian word from art. It means light and dark, and it's a technique in painting to make a very dramatic picture. We have a contrast between the darkness and then some bright spots here and there. So our life is a bit like that, a darkness or a dimness, and here and there things light up. So perhaps the error part is the darkness, and the truth part are the spots of light here and there. And he's turning here and there to find something, to find a wisdom, a secret knowledge, and a power that on the highest level of consciousness are his own. But he's searching for himself. In each one of us, the Lord is searching for himself because he's forgotten. He's forgotten who he is. He's seeking as if he'd lost an inner light. But in fact, that inner light is always there. As a sojourner is a person who's on a journey and he just stays for a short time here and there. So as a sojourner, lingering, traveling slowly in the midst of alien scenes, unfamiliar scenes, countries and landscapes. He's on a journey. He's journeying to a home, but he's forgotten where that home is and what it is. He doesn't know anymore where his home is or what it is. I think this is the most amazing thing. that the Lord has in us, of course on high, He knows it all. No? But in us, He's forgotten. We are searching for ourselves. It's Him in us searching for His true self, or our true selves.
And at the same time, I have to trust, I refine it.
Yes?
That's what
Say it again, Ton.
I say. At the same time,
Yeah.
I have to trust that I refine it.
That you will find it. Yes,
That I will find it.
you will of course find it. We are all destined to find it. Yeah. Not only individually, but in the universe. Sorry, Alice, what were you saying?
We have to keep our faith and trust in it.
Yes.
We knew it somehow within ourselves consciously.
Yes. And now we're reading essays on the Gita, and there Sri Krishna tells us how to do it. Who's next? Sarojini.
His own self who heals sick, who is the good. He is the player who become clay, who become the clay. He is the thinker who become the thought. He is the many who was the silent one.
Yes. So He in us is seeking the truth of Himself. But He is the truth. No? He's the player, the actor who worked out all this drama, and now He's identified Himself with the drama. He's forgotten that He's the script writer and the director and all that. He's just involved Himself, identified Himself with the play. He's the thinker, the original thinker with a capital T. And He has become the thought, all the many, many thoughts. Now, in us, He is the many. We can say, in that state beyond the manifestation, He was the silent one. Now He's become the many and taken birth in time and space. Dhanalakshmi.
In the simple figures of the cosmic force, and in her living and inanimate signs, and in her complex treasury of events, He explores the ceaseless miracle of Himself, till the thousandfold enigma has been solved in the single life of an all-witnessing soul.
Yes. So now Sri Aurobindo again reminds us of this connection between the One and His force. There's not only the one self and soul, there's also the Divine Mother, the Mighty Mother and her play. She's His dynamic force expressing His conceptions. So that cosmic force, she's created all these appearances, all these symbol figures, all these living signs and inanimate signs. And she's playing out this complex tracery of events. Tracery is a kind of architectural features, sculptural, decorative features. In Australia, I don't know whether you know, they have these cast iron balconies. They call it Sydney lace. It's very, very intricate tracery, decorative forms. So all the events, nature carries us through these complex, winding happenings. Through all that, He, the Lord, the soul in us, is exploring the ceaseless miracle of Himself. And He'll go on doing that until this thousandfold enigma, this mystery, this puzzle, this riddle, with all its so complicated aspects, until it has been solved. And He can only solve it in one way, in the single light of an all-witnessing soul. And He becomes again the soul that sees everything as it is, everything in its place. Then the mystery is solved. These lines that we've read today from line 736 to where we stopped just now, line 811. For many people, this is their favorite passage in Savitri.
The first 15 lines, it looks like lyrics. It gives the repeated different form of the one and how he manifests. Because the same line it repeats 3 times, the absolute, the perfect.
And then the third time it changes a little bit. So transcendent, universal, individual. And the divine soul in the individual is on this mysterious journey, lost, wandering, because it's forgotten who he really is. We've all forgotten. Yesterday we were reading about the avatar. The avatar is the one who hasn't forgotten, who's here, incarnated in the human life, participating in it fully, but who has remembered, who is conscious of his origin, his omniscience and his omnipotence. Not that he's carrying it all the time in his human mind, but he has access to it when needed. And that's the great realization that the Lord has prepared for all of us. Each of us individually first, and then the Gnostic society, the divine life upon earth. We can stop there for today.
The Absolute, the Perfect, the Alone, has called out of the silence his mute force, where she lay in the featureless and formless hush, guarding from time by her immobile sleep the ineffable puissance of his solitude. The Absolute, the Perfect, the Alone, has entered with his silence into space. He has fashioned these countless persons of one self. He has built 1,000,000 figures of his power. He lives in all who lived in his vast alone. Space is himself, and time is only he. The Absolute, the perfect, the immune, one who is in us as our secret self. Our mask of imperfection has assumed. He has made this tenement of flesh his own, his image in the human measure cast, that to his divine measure we might rise. Then in a figure of divinity the Maker shall recast us and impose a plan of Godhead on the mortal's mould, lifting our finite minds to his infinite, touching the moment with eternity. This transfiguration is earth's due to heaven. A mutual debt binds man to the Supreme. His nature we must put on as he put ours. We are sons of God and must be even as he. His human portion we must grow divine. Our life is a paradox with God for key. But meanwhile all is a shadow cast by a dream, and to the musing and immobile spirit, life and himself don the aspect of a myth, the burden of a long unmeaning tale. For the key is hid, and by the inconscient kept. The secret God beneath the threshold dwells. In a body obscuring the immortal spirit, a nameless resident, vesting unseen powers with matter's shapes and motives beyond thought, and the hazard of an unguessed consequence. An omnipotent, indiscernible influence, he sits, unfelt by the form in which he lives, and veils his knowledge by the groping mind. A wanderer in a world his thoughts have made, he turns in a chiaroscuro of error and truth to find a wisdom that on high is his. As one forgetting, he searches for himself, as if he had lost an inner light he seeks. As a sojourner lingering amid alien scenes, he journeys to a home he knows no more. His own self's truth he seeks, who is the truth. He is the player who became the play. He is the thinker who became the thought. He is the many who was the silent one. In the symbol figures of the cosmic force, and in her living and inanimate signs, and in her complex tracery of events, he explores the ceaseless miracle of himself, till the thousandfold enigma has been solved in the single light of an all-witnessing soul.